Good morning and greetings from Dublin. This is a short explainer video on the St. Joseph house selling statue tradition. We've made this video because we've realized that it's actually quite difficult to get succinct information on this statue tradition. So the first question, I guess, is what exactly is the St. Joseph house selling statue tradition? Well, according to an age-old tradition, if you bury a statue of St. Joseph upside down in the front garden of a house to be sold, somehow the house sells in a very short period of time. Many people ask where this statue tradition may have originated from, and it's a little bit unclear, but many people think that it may have come originally from Germany, and that Saint Teresa of Avila may in fact have been the lady or the nun who started this tradition. But what's really interesting reading about some of the material relating to the potential origins of the tradition is the fact that Saint Teresa of Avila was looking to buy land, not sell land. So she was trying to buy some land in order to build a convent and was having some difficulty getting the exact plot of land that she wanted because the landowner did not want to sell. Apparently she had all of the nuns bury a group of statues on the land that she wanted to buy, and the landowner changed his mind and sold the land. And so this is thought to be the origin of the tradition. But of course, in modern times, we actually use the St. Joseph statue not to buy land, but in fact to sell a house. Who exactly was St. Joseph? Well, St. Joseph was the foster father of Jesus, and by trade he was a carpenter. And there are many lovely stories about St. Joseph actually teaching Jesus the trade of carpentry. One of the things that's really interesting about him as a person is the fact that looking at the Gospels, he is known as the silent saint because there are no direct quotations attributable to St. Joseph. Nowadays, he's a patron saint of the Catholic Church, he's a patron saint of households, and he's a national saint of many countries, including Canada and China. Interest in St. Joseph and the St. Joseph statue actually increased significantly earlier this year because Pope Francis was on a visit to the Philippines. And while in the Philippines, Pope Francis announced that if he has a real problem, he writes that problem on a piece of paper. He puts the piece of paper under a small statue of St. Joseph and he heads off to bed and rests because he trusts that St. Joseph will actually help him deal with the problem or will deal with the problem when he's asleep, which is actually quite a nice and interesting twist on the St. Joseph statue. Let's look at the statue tradition and what it actually involves. So, house sellers are supposed to bury a small statue of St. Joseph in the front garden of the house to be sold. Curiously, the statue is supposed to be placed upside down in the garden. House sellers are supposed to say a special prayer of devotion to St. Joseph for 9 consecutive days and watch as the house sells. But there is an interesting final piece to the tradition, and that is that once the house has successfully sold, the house seller is supposed to unearth the statue and put it in a place of honor in the new home. What's quite interesting about this tradition is that nowadays the statue is becoming quite a popular wedding present because, it's known that over the lifetime for any marriage, many people will buy and sell houses. And so if you want to give a small present, for example, but a unique present and a memorable present, people will give a small statue of St. Joseph to a couple when they get married. And a further very interesting twist on the St. Joseph statue tradition is that what some people actually do is that they keep the statue in the family almost like a legacy piece. And they write down, for example, 1950, the St. Joseph statue was used to sell a house in Brooklyn. And then 1970, the same statue was used to sell a house maybe in New Jersey. So they actually chronicle the history of the statue as part of the history of the family and pass it on to children, which is quite nice. And I suppose the question then remains, does the statue actually work? Well, it's kind of interesting because if you look at Amazon, and you look at reviews on Amazon, you will see people who are posting rave reviews about how amazing the statue is. Let's look at this one that was posted in November of 2014. And you can see you can actually feel the excitement from the page. It says, "House is sold. Buyers came to our house 2 days after we got our St. Joseph statue. I would say it works, and I would recommend it to others." Let's look at another interesting review. This is a review posted in December of 2014. And again, you can feel the excitement. So it says, "My condo sat on the market for 3 years. It was in Cape Cod and had a water view. No one made an offer in all that time. My daughter bought a St. Joseph statue for me. I buried it, and the very next day I received my first and only offer, and the property sold." This is again from a verified buyer of the statue on Amazon. And it's incredible actually to do a Google search and just see how many people have reported these almost miraculous sales of houses. And it's attributed to the St. Joseph statue. We have been involved in selling the St. Joseph statue now since late 2014. And our company was set up by a group of PhD scientists. And we can't help ourselves but apply a little bit of research to this very interesting tradition. We found one study that's already been published on the St. Joseph statue tradition, and it was published in the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal found an inverse relationship between sales of the statue and the property market. So what that actually means is that if the property market is poor or in a slump, sales of the statue increase. So as people get more desperate to sell their house, they turn to the statue. And then as the property market strengthens, sales of the house drop. So as it becomes easier to sell a house, people use the statue tradition a little bit less. We've done some of our own internal market research and have found a number of really interesting things. The first is that most customers like to have a statue that is less than 5 inches. And this is interesting because sometimes customers will say, "Oh, we got the St. Joseph statue, but it's quite small." Well, there's a specific reason for this. You're not really buying, for example, a statue for its own value. People are buying it to sell a house. And as I've said, to sell the house, you're supposed to bury the statue upside down in the front garden. Well, I'm guessing you don't really want a massive statue and have to excavate the front garden at the time you're staging your home for sale. And that's why a small statuette is actually preferred. Another reason that a small size is preferred by most of our customers is the fact that if you actually want to sell an apartment, you can use a statue tradition, but what you do then is instead of burying a statue in the garden, because you don't have a garden, you bury the statue upside down in a pot of soil. So again, less than 5 inches is preferred, and in fact about 3.5 inches seems to be what people like best. The next interesting part that we have found is that most people like a plastic statue. And again, the reason for this is just logistics. If you're going to unearth the statue following a successful sale of the house, if it's ceramic or wood, then the statue may well be damaged either while it's in the ground or when you're unearthing it. And if you're going to then place that in a special place in your new home, then it's going to be much easier if it's a plastic statue because it will actually be unearthed intact, and also it's easy to clean afterwards. We have found that there are 2 main user groups, and this is quite interesting. One are a group of people who have a lifelong devotion to St. Joseph, and this is a natural extension of that devotion. And the other group are people who just really want to sell their house. They don't have an opinion one way or the other on the statue. They don't have a particular devotion to St. Joseph and may not even be of the Catholic faith. In fact, many of them are of other faiths. But they see value in using the statue tradition. And we can also let you know that we've seen sales of the statues throughout the 50 United States. In fact, our sales are really high in Hawaii. We have sent statues to Puerto Rico. The statue sells really well in Europe, in Northern Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, France, Spain, Italy. And more recently, we've done a little bit of research in Africa. And this is so interesting because we have found that there are pockets of Africa where the St. Joseph statue tradition is used. And going a little bit deeper into this, what we have found is that places in Africa where the missionaries were major opinion leaders, and that they actually passed on the statue tradition. And so you will find that in certain places in Africa, children who were basically educated by the Catholic nuns and priests have adopted this tradition too, which is really an interesting development. And this is another really interesting sort of final twist on the entire St. Joseph statue tradition. So there's a really interesting story that relates to St. Joseph, and that's to do with what's known as the magical, mysterious stairway and staircase in Santa Fe. So according to an old story, there was again a group of nuns who wanted to build a staircase because when they built a church, they built it, but unfortunately forgot to make a stairway between the lower level and then the small area where the choir would sing. And at that moment in time, there were no architectural solutions to the problem, short of knocking down this beautiful church that they had just built. And while they were pondering on their problem, the nuns prayed to St. Joseph. And a gentleman arrived at the door and said that he had heard about their problem and he was happy to work on this staircase. So he set about his work and built this really, really beautiful stairway, which has two unique 360-degree turns. Just as the staircase was finished and the nuns went to thank him and pay the bill, they realized that he had gone. He had disappeared without a trace. And they then spoke to the local supplier of wood, who said no, he hadn't supplied wood to any carpenter for this church. And in fact, he came to look at the wood and said it wasn't native to the Santa Fe area. Then some architects came and looked at it and said that it was an improbable solution, that it was beyond the architectural understanding of the day because it has no central support. And so the nuns concluded that in fact their carpenter was St. Joseph. And St. Joseph is, I guess, famous for making cameo roles in people's lives and helping them with the solution that they really need. And I have to say, I really was reminded of the Santa Fe staircase when I read this review on Amazon. It's kind of interesting if you listen to it. It says, "This is one of the most unusual events I have ever encountered. I ordered it and paid extra for the money-back guarantee. I followed the instructions, and on the 9th day I opened my door, and there was a gentleman standing there who was trying to call my agent to schedule a showing. To make a long story short, this works. On exactly the 9th day, as it says in the instructions, I received a full price offer. All cash, no inspection, no appraisal. It was amazing. I'm happy to say I'm taking St. Joseph with me to my new home to bless it and look after us. I highly recommend this." It's really hard to say for sure, but one thing is certainly it's possible that St. Joseph can make cameo appearances in anyone's life. And so, is it worth trying the St. Joseph statue? Well, we've seen phenomenal results with it. And if you look at return on investment, well, a St. Joseph statue is a very inexpensive purchase item. But we know that selling a house is one of the most stressful life events. And if you look at the costs involved in selling a house or the costs involved in staging a house so that it's absolutely perfect every time a viewer wants to come and see it, then it's probable that this is actually could yield a very high return on investment. So I hope that you have enjoyed this short explainer video. And just below this video, you will see a link to the St. Joseph statue that we sell on Amazon, which comes with the burial instructions and the special prayer. Wishing you every success with the sale of your house.